This study proposes the utilization of subliminal cues to guide spatial attention and a novel approach of its application on videos. A subliminal cue is a stimulus below the absolute threshold, and therefore below the awareness of the observer. Subliminal cues have been proven to have influences on low-level human behavior such as eye movement without conscious awareness. We examined the spatial attention guidance feature in both covert and overt attention in experimental and applied settings. The goal of this study was to confirm the effect of subliminal cues in guiding involuntary attentional shift and utilizing its spatial attention guidance feature in videos. In Experiment 1, staircase task was first carried out to determine the individual's threshold level. In the search, the subliminal cues gave the locational information and was determined by the threshold level. The trials consisted of 75% valid and 25% invalid cues. Experiment 1 showed that the covert spatial attention guidance feature of subliminal cues were effective. Also, there was a positive correlation between cue effect and threshold. As none of the participants noticed the existence of cue, it indicated that the cue effect and awareness is independent from one another. In Experiment 2, the effect of subliminal cues in guiding overt attention on a larger scale was examined comparing the eye gaze distribution in the left and right hemispheres of the video. Multiple subliminal cues were presented for each video clip, and the distribution of the cues were biased either to the left or right hemisphere of the screen. They were categorized into frequent and infrequent AOIs according to their cue frequency distribution for analysis. The frequent area displayed 80% of the total cue presentation, and the infrequent area 20%. The cue display locations were set on 16 coordinates and were randomly distributed every trial. Importantly, we strictly controlled the contents of the left and right hemisphere by editing the videos to be symmetric. This was to see the sole effect of subliminal cues in guiding overt attention while controlling the dynamic features of a video on each side. 30 videos were used, and according to the content of the video, they were categorized into two, action and scene. Cues were a consecutive display of white and gray blob with 15% opacity that was presented for 8 milliseconds each. This was to make the subtle flicker that will fit more into the dynamic context. The first block was a free viewing task, but did you notice the cues? Let's watch it again. The cues here are modified for clarity with 50% opacity and 80 millisecond display time. 25 participants were recruited for Experiment 2, and all the participants were naive to the purpose of the task. Their gaze behaviors were recorded with gaze points GP3 HD. In the second block, they watched the same videos and answered several questionnaires to find out if they were aware of the cues. The analysis showed no significant difference between the frequent AOI and infrequent AOI. Thus, we followed it up with a Bayesian analysis, which showed 4.35 times more likely under the null hypothesis with the Bayesian factor of 0.23. As there was no cue main effect, we performed additional analysis on the factors that could have influenced the gaze behaviors. The lack of cue effect could have been due to the opposite behavioral patterns of female and male participants. The cue effect in Block 1 showed a significant interaction effect with gender, and post-hoc analysis revealed that the female participants had a tendency to fixate on the frequent side, while the male participants did not. This could be due to gender differences in attention and gaze behaviors. Another factor that could have contributed to the lack of overall cue effect is individual gaze orientation bias. Each individual was biased toward left or right side in the baseline trials, and this tendency sustained in cues trials irrespective of cue frequency. This indicated that the consistent gaze orientation bias within individuals may have cancelled out the overall gaze distribution difference. These are the contributions of this study. First, by examining the effect of subliminal cues adjusted accordingly with individual threshold in an experimental environment, this study replicates and confirms the effectiveness of subliminal cues in guiding covert attention in terms of visual search. Second, we designed and tested a novel attempt in subliminal cue application. Also, by examining how the global gaze distribution of viewers changes according to frequency of subliminal cues on each side of the videos, this study provides insight on the factors to consider in applying subliminal cues in video contexts. Lastly, we provide a database of video stimuli that can be used for other visual cognition experiments that require strict control of left and right saliency, but in a dynamic context.